Hello everybody, Gisele Grenier here. In this video lesson, I'm going to be using paint left over from another lesson, and I want to show you how to create a backdrop for taking pictures of your art. And I'm using this on a small piece here, and only for time savings and because I don't have room on my art table. So one of the things that I notice a lot about when you guys have been sending me emails to take a look at your art is that you take pictures of your art on, your kitchen table, kitchen counter, all that stuff, even on your art table, which is a mess, which is totally fine. It makes it very hard to judge true colors because light reflects off everything and reflects back onto your artwork. So creating an actual backdrop that you can use for photographing your art pieces is a really, really simple way just to make it easier for your art to be the focal point and not everything else that's on your table. So you could do this as big as you want. There's foam board on the table here. You can use something like that. But what I like to do is I like to use actual heavy watercolor paper and use them in full sheets in different colors. And I'm going to be giving you guys a whole bunch of lessons on this, on creating backdrops with different colors depending on your art. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to create a backdrop that's neon colors and then your art piece is something that's very soft and subtle. It just clashes. But you want your backdrops to be relatively neutral. So what I have now, I'm probably not going to use these, and I may bring out another color. What I've got are the leftover paints for the other lesson. They're the Decor Traditions, Yellow Oxide, Raw Sienna, Burnt Sienna, Raw Umber, Carbon Black, and Opaque Titanium White. But what I've brought in is I brought in the Decor Media Fluid Acrylics, Transparent Red Iron Oxide, and I'm looking here, and I want to bring in some Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide right in between here. All right, so let's put that right here. So, and what I did before is I primed this with a layer of the chalky gesso. I'm holding it upside down because it's, when you're using gesso in big containers like this, because it's so large, when you get down to, you only have about half the amount of paint, it doesn't matter what anybody says. Air dries, there's air inside here, and that's going to dry out the paint. So unless you're shaking this every day, oh, there goes the table. Unless you're shaking this every day, you're going to have some clumps in here. So what I've done is I've poured it into an empty bottle of the Traditions Opaque White, and I just put the label on here and just squeeze it out, and just it's in smaller batches so it won't clump up as much. It's with anything that happens, okay? It's not just the gesso. All right, so what I thought I would do is can start off with just using a flat brush for this. So to create something that's really soft, I'm going to take some white, and you can use gesso for this. You can use white paint. You can use craft paint. It doesn't matter as long as you know really what's in the color, because you don't get any surprises. But these colors here are all neutral, so you're going to get something really soft. I'm also not going to go to the very edge of the paper just for time savings. So what you can do is you can create this on a big sheet and don't go to the edge. That way you can handle it and not get paint all everywhere, but then you can cut it. So I want to start light and then work dark. So I'm going to start off with the Transparent Yellow Iron Oxide, and I'm just going to go in here. And ideally we want to work wet on wet. So we start in the middle, then we pick up more paint and go on the outside. And this is actually drying very quickly. So let's just take some water and give it a light mist. Pick up more paint, go on the outside. And then we'll just feather that out. Again, you want to try to do this wet on wet so you can get the blending. Didn't I just say I wasn't going to go to the outside edge? Then going to come in and just kind of feather over. You can use a mop brush for this. What you don't want to do is you don't want to lose all these nice brush strokes. So I'm looking here saying I need a little bit more of a value shift. I'm going to pick up a bit more white, and I'm going to come in here with a bit more white and choose areas where I want to variegate that color, almost like a marble. And just light, 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 light. And I like working the edges brown, like a dark, this particular one here, like a dark brown, like a vignette, because if you're putting your art in the middle, it kind of contains it. It contains it. Now this paint is drying really, really quickly because the furnace is on. So depending on where you are in the world, oopsie, oh well. Depending on where you are in the world, it may take longer to dry, or if you're doing this with oils. I wouldn't waste my time doing backgrounds like this with oils because it'll take forever to dry. But so there we go. Now I know there's quite the glare on here. There you can see. See, you can see the bubbles. That's where I didn't put any gesso. So that's a faux pas on my part, but I don't care because it's just a background. So once that dries, you can say, okay, well, I think I want to go a little bit further with this. So there's one background. And then you can create another background. And to save time, I'm going to use the exact same one just to show you how you can build. So you can do one background like this, then go to another piece of paper, create the same background, and then watch with these steps. Is I can make something a little bit darker. So I'm going to rinse my brush. And what you want to do is you want to make sure this is dry. So I'm going to get my heat gun. Because when we're working with transparent color, what you don't want to happen is you don't want to pick up any white paint. Oh, and I had a water spot there and it came up. And ideally a clean brush. Now I'm looking here, you can see there's still white paint in here. So shouldn't be using this. I'm going to anyways because I hate cleaning brushes. But I can take transparent red iron oxide, and I'll need a baby wipe handy. I'm going to do this in small stages. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go for something grungy. Now what I'm doing is I'm picking up some of the paint and I'm bringing it to the other areas of the paper. And I apologize for the shaking. Joe's going to move my art table tomorrow, so Mia's going to lose her queen size bed. All right, let me just turn this. Oh. And I like this grungy look. Now this is just one way of doing it. There's a whole bunch of different ways that you can do this. And these cloths here, I'm going to keep those for backgrounds. I'm doing a whole bunch, getting a whole bunch of them prepared. That way I can do a lesson on using these leftover rags. That way they don't end up in landfill. And because we're working with the same color, you can just use the dirty part. You don't have to keep rotating to a clean part. I love that line there. That's like that. A bit strong though, so I'm just gonna. You can see how nice and rough that is. You know what this will work out really nice for? A background for a portrait or even mixed media. That would work out quite nice as well. Now I've lost a little bit of color here, so I'm going to let that dry. And just come in here. And when you're doing this for photography purposes, is that you have it, there's enough color on here so it's not so boring, but you can also use these for contrast. So if you have a very light piece of art, you can create a dark background, and if you have a very dark piece of art, you can create a light background. To give you an idea, oops, wrong box. Nope, wrong box. Nope, wrong box. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh no, I don't know where the pieces are. Okay, well, let's, I don't know, we'll just use this. So if you think of when you're doing your photography now, that this would look so much nicer than doing something like that, because you've got all the crap around there. But you can photograph your piece on something like that, and then when you photograph it, then you can crop it. Or you can even, depending on if you're doing it for Pinterest or, you know, one of your Instagram stories or Pinterest stories, if you have that. I just got access to Pinterest stories 2 weeks ago. I'm loving it. But then you can make it lengthwise, or portrait, like tall. And then you can show that. Otherwise, if you're working with, you know, an Instagram post, which is square. Facebook, you can do square. So you would just crop it. And with photographing your piece, so if you are working with something square and you think, well, okay, with squares like this, I'm going to have all this extra space on the side, put it on an angle. And now when you're working at square, it's not so bad. Let me actually show you. Let me actually show you. That's yeah, I don't have any. Talk about lazy. Oh my goodness. Talk about lazy. I don't have a pencil handy. This would be good for a book of backgrounds too. And you're going to do these on a proper sheet of paper, not the way I'm doing it. This is just for demonstration purposes. I've got so many backdrops that I've used, but don't throw that away. So see? So you can photograph it on its side, and then you can crop it down a little bit more so it's actually going to make a lot more sense than just photographing it this way. And if you can, you know, photograph it here, and then you can make some room for some text, you know, if you're doing it for Pinterest or for Facebook. All right. So we cut this piece now. Now, well, it doesn't make any sense now because there's this big light patch here. Well, add more color. It's very simple. And maybe put something underneath so you're not going to get color all over your table. Going outside in, you're going to get that nice grunge. And then use your baby wipe to, I like that. Use your baby wipe to kind of pick up a bit of the excess. I'm loving this. So I can take my brush, which has most of the paint removed, and come over different angles. So you can have backdrops specifically for, you know, if you do artist trading cards that are small, because then you can focus. If you know you're going to use a backdrop with a lot of text, then you can make your piece on, let's say on the one side, darker and lighter here. So I can turn around, just put a bit more here. So the lighter area is going to be more on the left. So for photography purposes, I can do something like that. And this gives you about this much room for cropping. So you have about that much room. So you want to make sure that your feathering comes in to where you would actually crop. Something like that. And then you can put your texture if you want, or you can do it like, you know, even like that. Cut it down, do it straight, whatever you want to do. All right, so that's that for a background. Now, the other thing you can do is, let's say you want to make it even deeper. So let's say we're working on something, I don't know, something steampunky. We can work on the back, but what we could also do is just work directly on top of this. I'm not going to work on top of this. I'm going to turn this over. that be used? You could use this for, that might be not, that's not enough. I would just use this now for artist trading card background, but not enough room on the back. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to take white, and I'm just going to use my brush and just, I'm just going to, oh no, I don't want to put any water in there. I actually should have used gesso, not white paint. I'm running out of the paint. So this is the DecoArt chalky, the chalky gesso. So these photo backgrounds, the DIY photo backgrounds, again, you can use these for book of backgrounds as well. It's no problem with that. I was inspired to make my own photo backgrounds because I was spending a ton of money on Amazon getting my photo backgrounds, not so much for the art stuff, but more for my actual commercial photography for my, because I have a, Joe and I have a business, but I create a side business where I create websites, custom websites and website templates for creatives. And I, you know, some of the creatives, some of the clients were sending me product to photograph because they didn't have anything. And I needed to do the backgrounds. And I think, oh my God, these backgrounds were so expensive. They all came from China and the quality was just not there. So I made my own. That way was truly, truly a custom experience for the client. So here what I can do now is I can turn around and take, well, I can take raw umber and with the gesso still being wet, come in here and repeat the same process. This is drying a little bit. No, I'm going to leave it grungy like that. And pick up a little bit more. I'm going to pick up a bit of burnt sienna in there. Because I'm going to let this dry out because I'm going to show you what you can do when it's dried and you can't work with it anymore. Because I know that this is going to come up for some of you. You say, I can't do any more painting. It's too dry. I can't get that nice blend. So I'm just going in with some raw umber and some burnt sienna. I forgot to put that in there. So raw umber, burnt sienna. So this would work out well for a something that's more old school, steampunk. Oh, this is really getting hard. Oh my God. How nice would that be for a book of backgrounds? You know what I noticed here? I see a line here. Let's get rid of that line. Make sure you don't have any hard lines in there because that's going to affect how your stuff photographs. And now you can see why I don't like going to the edge because I'm holding the paper down and then I pull up a fingerprint. I don't need my DNA being out there. So you would just basically create your background and then trim it down. But because it's just a background for photography, it's no biggie. So the outside edge is relatively dry now. Let me just go a little bit further in. I'm going to turn this because it's a little bit easier for my arthritis if I'm pulling away from my body. Pick up a bit more paint. So as it is right now, I'm really sorry for that shaking. The paint here is dry, so I know if I put the paint down, it's not going to, where's that mark here? Everything's backwards for me. It's not going to blend out very well. What you can do is you can, use some matte medium. Use some matte medium, put that on there, and then I can pick up some color. And now it's blending beautifully. It's still going to be transparent. It'll have a matte finish, which is what you want when you're doing photography. But it's going to blend out really nice. I mean, you can get fancy and go with transparent gesso, but why? Matte medium is something you have anyways if you're doing mixed media. Now I can come in with a bit more raw umber. See how it just blends beautifully? Because a matte medium takes much longer to dry. But look at that shine now because it's really wet. But if I were to do the same thing here, I've got matte medium still in my brush. I can try to go as far as I can. Now I'm creating this one. Now it's getting harder here. So I'm creating this one now on the assumption that it's going to be more of a center focused backdrop. There we go. Let me just close this up. I don't want this to dry. So you can use matte medium. Now the other thing you can do is you can use paper towel and you can press on the paper to get some texture. Now where I use my fingers, it actually does an imprint of your fingers. So you can crumple your paper up and you can do it like this. These are just techniques. You can do whatever you want. And again, I apologize for the camera shaking. Tomorrow, I promise. I'm doing all this filming on a Saturday. I'm doing a bunch of videos. Poor Mia, she's gonna lose her bed. Now, as I'm doing this too, I'm putting my fingers on the edge and it's ripping up the paper, which I think is really, I think that's really cool. Now, what is this from? Oh, that's probably from the paper towel. What if we kept going? Sandpaper. Oh, look at that. Happy accident. Happy accident. Oh, I like that. And this is because the paint hasn't dried. Oh, yeah. Ooh. It's like street art. Now, if you have delicate skin, don't do this because this is hard on the skin. Okay, so the back, because it's pulling up the paper, I'm thinking, you know what? This white is really, really strong. I'm not sure I like that white being that strong. This is where we can add additional color. Well, we'll add a transparent color. My go-to, I know, is going to be transparent red iron oxide. But that may be a bit red. So can we add an opaque color? Yeah, but you're going to get some color on here. So I can turn around and take transparent yellow iron oxide with the transparent red iron oxide. Yeah. Let me grab a bit of matte medium in there. That'll make it even more transparent. And this will all be just, you'll have to experiment with what works for you. Oh, I love this. And then what I would do, because for photography, I would seal this with a matte varnish. Because you don't want gloss varnish on something like this. Because you'll have all that shine. You already know how much trouble I have with glare. This would make an awesome book of backgrounds. Oh my goodness. So to to replicate this, I think would have been more difficult if I painted the paper first with this color, which I did. Oh no, on the other side, and then paint that and try to rip it up. This is a great way to, you know, something with the, because the paper started tearing up, is to take advantage of that, because this style will never be able to replicate ever again. So I look at this and I go, okay, well, I've got some white here, which I think is kind of nice. Do I find it to be a little bit too red? Me. I can add, let's take a little bit of carbon black because I have it here. Go into that same mixture. And let's just go on the outside edges and layer. Again, wet on wet is what's going to really make this shine. Take a bit of burnt sienna in there. I'm gonna wipe my brush. Just gonna go in between on the outside. Ooh, I love that. But see how grungy this is getting now? You can't buy stuff like this. Now, if you're low on paper, then you can use this for, you know, many different types of photographs. But I can turn around and say, well, you can make a set of backgrounds, you know, cropped like this for Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook, whatever. But take a really, really large sheet. And if you're going to do something just for artist trading cards, then you can use that same background, cut into different pieces, or just use the full background and just put it on the floor, put your artwork there, then get your camera on a tripod, whether you're using your phone or a camera, and then just, you know, move it up and down so it's, you got a good amount there. You want to try to get as close as possible, because with smartphones and some cameras, it's fake quality. You have optical zoom and digital zoom. You want to use optical zoom, which is the actual zooming in the lens. Digital zoom is just the camera getting fancy and, you know, digitally zooming the image, and you don't get the quality there. So all this thing of 200 times digital zoom, no, you don't want it. You don't want to use that. So you want to try to bring your camera as close as possible to your artwork. There we go. So I can now get more matte medium. And do not put your paint brush directly in the bottle. And I'm just going to start putting a sealing coat on here. Yes, this is still wet. I am fine with that. And the more sealing coats that you put on there, you know, the more work that you can continue to do. You can continue to add more layers of color. It all depends on what you want to do. But just remember, your backdrop, a matte finish. And then when it's dry, you can then, other options is you can turn around with, let's say, liquid graphite and come in and outline the tears on there. You could, oh, sorry, just had to put that in the garbage. You can turn around liquid graphite, spray acrylics, you know, that type of thing. Get that. There we go. What I want to do, though, look at the paper stuck to me. What I want to do is I want to dry this, and then I'm going to show you the varnishing with gloss versus matte, just so you can get an idea. Because I know a lot of you with art love the gloss finish because it really makes your colors pop. But as a backdrop, I'm sorry, sweeties, you can't. You've got to use a matte finish because of the glare. No amount of post-processing in Photoshop or Lightroom or PicMonkey or whatever app that you're using, nothing's going to get rid of that glare unless you start putting overlays and overlays. It's just more simple. Just ensure that your background has a matte finish. So I'm going to pause for a sec, dry this, and then I'm going to go over the varnishing sequence. Okay, so I'm going to move. Whoopsie, that's a chew toy for me. I better get that off the floor. Oh. All right, so I'm going to clean that up a bit. I took some pictures while the thing was drying, and I'm going to show you while we wait for the varnish to dry. So I'm not going to do this one. I'm going to do this one here because I actually want to use this for something else. So I've got the Decor Media Ultra Matte Varnish, and I've got the Americana Duraclear High Gloss Varnish. I love the Duraclear line from Decor because it's polyurethane, indoor, outdoor. Whereas depending on the varnishes here, this is also indoor, outdoor. You got to be careful. Like triple thick, which is super high gloss, can't be used outdoor. So you got to weigh the pros and cons. I'm going to use my varnish brush, which I've marked with tape. And I'm going to go here. And I'm just going to go halfway. And now okay, I'm going to put that in some water. Let me get another brush. I don't like using paint brushes for varnishing. I have very specific brushes for varnishing, so because they're soft. And always follow the directions on the bottle for use. Now, one thing with doing a background, which would have been nice, is a crackle background. What do you do for photography with that because it's glossy? If you guys want to see a photographic background using crackle for photography, and then an example of an actual photograph being taken, let me know in the comments below. So I'm going to put this aside to dry, and let's go back to this. So what I did is I took a bunch of recent pieces that I did, and I used this backdrop here. It doesn't really matter. It was just more to show you. And I took pictures with only my phone with a bunch of these pieces here, and to illustrate. Now I'm not going to use any special software to show you on the phone display, but I'm just using the native app from the phone. Okay, so this is the app that came with the phone. I use Lightroom for everything, but you don't have to buy anything. So I just took one and then I cropped it. And then I guess it would have helped for me to actually show you the process. There we go. So here's one that I took with the black card. So just to crop it, and press the crop button and then bring it down and just crop it like that and then hit save. Now when using the actual photo editor that comes with the phone, it actually alters the original photograph, which is why I like using Lightroom, because it's non-destructive. So here's another one here. We'll do that one, and let's crop that. And I should actually show you in Lightroom, because I'm going like this and I gotta wait for the little vibration for it to say 1:1. You saw that little thing there? See? That means it's perfectly square. And then if I want to make it a different ratio, wait for it to pop. 9:16, that's stories and Pinterest. But look, it's a perfect format for Pinterest and stories, but you've got all that extra white space. So I would have needed to make this a little bit bigger. But for getting it square, that's 3:4 ratio. So this way would be good for Facebook, but here we go, 1:1. And then we just move that around, and there you go. There's your piece for Instagram, anything that takes a square photo, and Facebook will work with that as well. Then save that. Okay, so here I use the other side. So using complementary colors, so a orange with a blue piece of artwork. See how that artwork really pops? It really pops. I'm going to get that 1:1 square, and then see, I can't even move it because it's left and right. I can't move it. I would have to crop it down more, then move it over. I'm not going to get enough space so to put text on there. So let's try another one. That's something that do I have one that have more room. Now see, these are all, eek, they're all small. So if I wanted to do that, let's try that. So to take the picture of it, come here and you want to make sure you have, now if you want to use dark text, you can use the light part, or if you want to use light text, make it darker. It doesn't really matter. Try both. Go as high as you can. Take the picture and then edit it. Please don't ask me how you do this on an iPhone. I'm not an Apple person. Joe and I are anti-Apple. That's just us. We just don't like. There we go. And then you can put your text here. But we have to make sure that's 1:1 though. There we go. Then you can move that around. This is without adding any filters. So you've got your text you can add there. Then hit save. But Apple, I mean, if you got an iPhone, I'm sure you know how to do that. My daughter, she's a BlackBerry person. My son is an Apple person for phones and, you know, their Apple Watchy thingies. And Joe and I are Samsung users. Samsung, LG. For computers is Windows, but me Linux. Old school. Let's get that to 1:1. There we go, right there. Okay, and save. Now let me show you in Lightroom Classic or Lightroom Cloud, and let's just add a picture, and let's pick one that I haven't edited. Did I edit this one? Did I edit this one? Oh yeah, I did already. Oh darn! Hang on. Let me try to find. Let me try to find one that I didn't. You know what? Easier to take another picture. It's easier just to take another picture. See, that's the problem with using the native app in this, is that it changes the original photo, whereas if you use Lightroom, it doesn't. Okay, so go out, then go into Lightroom, and then we'll add a photo, and here's the photo. Add that. One photo added. Click on it. So now I'm going to crop. And what I like about Lightroom is I can click original, click the original icon, then it tells me, gives me all these options. So if I want to go 9:16, that's a Pinterest style or stories. So now this is optimized for stories and for Pinterest. But see how much nicer that is than if you were to take your picture like that. I mean, as a work in progress or behind the scenes photo, that's fine, but this is so much nicer. And I just click the check mark. And then once I can keep going on with this, and it hasn't touched the original, it makes a copy, and then you're just working with a copy. So I can turn around and create, click one of my presets. I've got a gazillion presets. I want to go black and white. There we go. I love that. Now I have a black and white version. Okay, if I don't like what I've done, I can go back to the previous adjustment, go back to presets. Because sometimes, like say, when you're taking pictures, like I'm looking at this, and this is more blue than the actual piece. This has a bit more green in it. So I can turn around and click brighter green, and that's, mind you, that's from light and airy. Let me reverse that. There we go. So that's a bit closer. Not quite enough green. Then I can turn around and I can go into the color settings, and I can turn around to mix. I can go into green, and I can add a little bit more green to it. Just a little bit more. Let's go into a little bit of the blue. There we go. And hit done. So now we're all set. Whoopsie. Now we're all set, and we've got something that we can use. I mean, display wise, I made this a little bit lighter so it's easier to see, but you can play with the colors. Whatever app that you use, it doesn't really matter. The whole purpose of this is that we're using a backdrop for your photography. So now let's put that aside. Let's grab this. Okay, so this is still wet. This is still dry, but look at the difference. This is going to look like this when it's dry. So for photography, that's what you're going to end up with. You're going to have that. Let's see if I can dry this, speed it up. And don't do this for varnishing. Let your stuff dry naturally. Let's see if I can just dry that center part. Or do I have something that I've already varnished? Let's try this. So see, if you have a glossy background, that's what you're going to have to deal with. Versus a matte finish. Okay, so that's why you want your photography backdrops to always be matte. Okay, this one here is the Decor Media Ultra Matte Varnish. Gloss looks much better for color because it makes it look rich. But the backdrop is just there just to be a supporting piece to your artwork. Now, if you want to take a picture of this, what you could do is tilt it at a certain distance and do something a bit more creative with it. But this is gloss. There's nothing you can do about it unless you cover it with a matte varnish, photograph it, then cover it with a gloss varnish, but you're going to get gloss inside here as well. So be aware that anything that you use in art or your background that has a glossy finish, you're going to have these reflective, these light reflections. So just be a little bit more creative on how you photograph them. Okay. So hopefully this helps you get some ideas on how to photograph your pieces, whether you're doing it professionally or not. Even if you're just doing it for social media, just to create a nice backdrop for your pieces. And like I said, this could be a great book of backgrounds, and I may use it for book of backgrounds. This is a bit small for me for my art, but it does create some really nice backgrounds for taking your pictures. Let me just grab that. See, I can't even use this for my cover screen for the videos because it's square. But it would work well on social media. All right, so I would love to see your take on creating a backdrop. So the challenge for you is to create a vintage style background, and bonus points if you had an accident where you actually started to pull the paper up. That would even be better. Like I said, I wouldn't be able to replicate this again if I tried. Not that exact thing. I don't like this one here that's perfectly square. I think it's a part of the paper towel, so I can feel the edge there. So let me see what you've done. So what to do is do a piece and then, either post a link to where you have it or go to the Facebook group, and that's in the description, and post it there. And so we can take a look at it, and, even more bonus points for sharing on how you did it. So we can all try doing the same thing just to explore different options. Alrighty. So if you want to see more videos on creating these backdrops, whether they're for book of backgrounds or for photography, comment below. Let me know. I have no problem doing this because anything that helps you photograph your artwork better, whether you're sharing professionally or personally, I'd be more than happy to help you. Alrighty, so until I see you next time, stay inspired.